Okay, good evening and welcome to the January 7th, 2014 meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners. This is a special joint meeting with the Community and Economic Development Agency Board. And with that in mind, why don't we pause and allow them to open their meeting.
Call to order the joint workshop between the CEDA Board and the Board of Selectmen on January 6th at 6 p.m. Present, Jean Connaughton, Sandra Bessie, Joe Jeffries, and Dave Smith, along with our CEDA Director, Salvador.
So why don't you come on up and sit right up front here.
I thought we brought a chair for you, Sal.
Yeah, he did. He's being shy. I don't know why, but maybe we'll find out.
Trying to be respectful.
His usual self.
And could we have the roll call, please? The Selectmen.
Present today is Selectman Whiteside, Selectman Tropiano, Selectman Holmes, Selectman Slavin, and Selectman Teitelbaum.
Okay. Just for the public's information, the Community and Economic Development Agency Board met last night to discuss recommendations for the upcoming application for the next fiscal year's block grant. The amount is the same, $900,000. The allocations and the recommendations they came up with were a little bit different than what was in the prior block grant. So part of the purpose of this is to hear what their recommendations are and why they're making these recommendations. Selectman Slavin and I both attended and observed, so we heard what they have to say, but it's important for the rest of the Board of Selectmen to hear this as well, because ultimately what occurs here is there is a vote by the Board of Selectmen to authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to sign the grant application. And that's not something I think any chairman should be doing without a vote of the board. It's the taxpayers' money, it's the townspeople's money, and so the entire representation of the board is critical to the process of getting to the point where everybody's comfortable with what we're going to do with the money, and we go from there. So with that in mind, why don't you sort of take over here and go through these line by line. I don't know if we want to stop with each one and ask questions about it. Perhaps that's the way to go.
Can we do it at the end?
That
And they
would
do a quickie summary and then we'll go
Then you can go
That
recognize
I'd rather
individual.
do it that way because we might get hung up on one and never get to the next one.
Just to let you folks know, these microphones are extremely directional, and you've got to get right up close to them and almost swallow the thing in order to be heard properly. So as different members and Director Pina speak, you'll need to pass the microphones around and basically use them the same way I am, about 2 inches from your mouth.
Better?
Yep. Otherwise, you'll hear from Bob, and sometimes he can be a little sharp over there.
That's good. Okay, as Chairman Teitelbaum stated, we met last evening and had a several-hour discussion on the components for the 2014 grant. And we have listed here for 2014, which, by the way, the application is due, I think it's February 14th. And administration, we have $250,000. Public services, $175,000. That's split between 5 public service grants that will be selected that have applied for it. Housing rehab of $200,000. Recovery Road renovation project, $100,000.
Is that the Donovan School
Yes, it
property? Thank
is. Merchants Way stormwater design, $100,000. Is that a stormwater design, or is it actually stormwater?
It's the
Improvement.
you. Implementation.
Improvements, yes. So, because I think the design is done. And a planning of $50,000. And the Route 195 Information Center out on 195, we had purchased a mobile trailer 10, 12 years ago, which was old at that time. In any event, it needs some renovations, a roof, which is just flat, and a new handicap ramp and some siding. We have put in $25,000. We're hoping it won't come to that amount, but we just wanted to be sure we had enough to cover it. Down below, you can see where we were last year with the $900,000 grant. The difference is that we had the Phase 3 of the downtown renovation in there. And so this year, we do not have that, so that's why we have kind of a potpourri, as I said to Peter last night, of nice things. These are projects that we'd like to cover and don't usually have can afford the money to do that. So this is a good year for us to do these projects. So, questions?
Selectman Whiteside?
Thank you. The public services, those are the 5 grant applications out of the 7 that we're going to be discussing at some point in the next.
Thursday morning.
Thursday
at
morning.
8:30.
Yes. Thank you. And housing rehabilitation, can you enlarge upon that?
Well, essentially, we always have that component.
Right.
It's an annual in component of the grant, but essentially, low to mod, basically, residents can apply for a loan, and some of them do not need to be paid back for 15 years, and then they're simply, if they sell the house, then they must return the amount borrowed.
Mm-hmm.
But they will go in, essentially, most of the time they go in because there are code violations or they need to bring their house up to code and can't afford to do so. But they will go in there and then do some renovations. So,
They being, I'm sorry, is it people that are hired through CEDA? How does it get done? Please.
we have a program manager, Karen Hamilton,
Mhm.
who handles the intake, and then we have a housing inspector who goes out and does the estimates. They determine whether it's eligible,
Mhm.
and then from then on, they put out a bid for, they have contractors on their list. I'm not sure how many are on the list.
Okay.
They like to have a number of them on there,
Mhm.
and then they will put the project out to bid,
Mhm.
and then move forward.
And out to bid would be 3 bids?
Yes,
Okay.
at least.
And
Hopefully.
your housing inspector, is that what you said?
Yes.
Is that
I
somebody
might
that,
have called him, do we call him a housing inspector, or is there a,
Yeah,
He's-
he's a housing rehabilitation
Rehab.
specialist, is what we call him. But he's a gentleman who's had a lot of years of construction. He helps to develop the scope of work for each project.
and is he paid out of that amount of money?
yes.
He's paid out of the office administration.
He's paid, okay.
That's out
So
of the
he's paid
grant.
out of the 250?
Yeah.
Okay. And so he's the one who, I would call him the clerk of the works?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
good way to think of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Recovery Road is roof and other,
It's actually, there is a drainage problem or a water problem, that there is some water dripping off of the roof, and so there needs to be a grade correction out front, and probably Salvador can give you a better description than I can, but essentially that's that water coming off the roof and the grade out front are causing some problems with the bottom of the structure, and there are concerns about having problems with that and needing to repair it, so we won't let it get any worse than it is.
okay.
Would you like to add to that, Salvador?
Sure.
Really?
Sure. Recovery Road is a piece of property that CEDA owns, and that is the Christopher Donovan Day School is housed in, and they rent the property from us. We've made over the course of just my short time here, we've made a number of renovations to the property. What we found, though, was that the property was built directly on a slab, and so the foundation rests right on a slab, and what's happened is it's beginning to rot right around the bottom of the foundation, because the house hasn't been lifted up from the foundation. And so there are 2 or 3 primary issues. One is out front, the grade tilts towards the property, so it brings water towards the home. And then there's some work right around the roof. Even though we put a new roof on it, there's work around the sills that need to be taken care of so that the water doesn't fall straight down and seep in. And then the third piece is the siding needs to be replaced
On the whole building?
on the whole building, yes.
Okay. And how long has the Donovan School been there? Because childcare there before?
There was a childcare. Originally, CEDA owned the entire industrial park.
Right.
And that there was a childcare center there to support the industrial park. That childcare center left. I want to say that Christopher Donovan's been there for about 5 years. This is the last year of their lease, 2014. I spoke with Helen Bradbury today, and she assured me that she's interested in renewing her lease for an additional 5 years and would like to begin the negotiations on that.
Can you tell us what the lease amount is now?
Yes, it's about $2,500 a month.
And do you know in the past 5 years how much money has been spent on that building?
I do not. I just know recently we had to replace the heating system and the roof. I wasn't here when the original lease was put together, and there were some commitments made in the lease that we had to address. One was the heating system, the other one was the roof, and then there was a third one which had to do with the play area on the side of the property. So when I came in, we were in the middle of those renovations, so I helped to complete those renovations.
Could I give you a little more history on the background? That building was built, I think it was 28 years old
yeah.
when CEDA was formed in 2004. And when we started to look through the paperwork, we discovered that there had never been any rent charged to the child care center for those years. Originally, it had started out that they were going to rent it to them for $1 a year until such time as they got on their feet. Well, for whatever happened in the history, of course, they didn't come forward, and they made some renovations and corrections on themselves. But needless to say, after 28 years, it needed a lot of work. And so that's why we're catching up.
Okay. The building, it sort of backs up to a little, I would call it, wettish area. So that, I mean, the road is here and the building is here. So you're going to have that drainage problem anyway, because down in the back may not be a brook, but it's certainly something that's got frogs in it. So are you going to put something like French drains around so that
Yeah,
it
we've
is
had-
actually, real remedial, not just make it pretty and, okay.
Yeah, I had engineers, 3 different engineers, take a look at the property. They've all come up with a series of recommendations to handle the drainage. So we'll be working through those, but they include a number of interesting solutions to that problem.
And we also put in the motion last evening that we would try the French drain first to see if that would work, and then we would move on to the other actions that we might need to take.
Okay, but the siding has to be done anyway. Yeah, okay, good. The Merchants Way improvements, can you expand on that?
Yeah.
Rain garden?
I'm gonna
No
leave
rain
you to
garden.
that.
Well, we have a stormwater design plan that's been approved by the Conservation Commission. What we discussed yesterday was taking $100,000 and looking at that stormwater design plan and carving out a piece of the work that would help us remediate some of the stormwater. So it's our intention to go forward over the course of the next year. We don't receive this grant until next September.
Right.
So it's our intention to work with the Board of Selectmen and my board, the CEDA board, to look at what piece we can carve out for the stormwater design. But we've already got the design completed.
Help me out here, please. So if it's already designed, it's the implementation of the design?
That's correct. That's correct. So it's to phase in a piece of the implementation. I know, of course, Selectman Slavin was there yesterday, and he had concerns about he's expressed concerns in the past about the design. So we're going to look at that. I'm not trying to be evasive. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that in order for me to apply for it, I have to give them a design plan. Okay? We have then 8 or 9 months internally here to look through that plan and make sure that we're all comfortable with the piece that we implement.
Okay. Is the plan the thing that you had here several months ago? It had the streetscape stuff and it had...
No, that's the Merchants Way concept drawings.
Right.
That's different.
But there was some piece of paper that we had that had a
Yeah,
schematic.
Russ Kleekamp, who represents Green Seal Environmental, presented an actual stormwater design plan to give everybody a sense of what that might look like. At the time that we did that, the Merchants Way concept drawings were not complete, so that plan was actually designed independent of that. And now, consequently, it's changed because the train will now be stopping in a different area, so we need to revisit it. But I think the important, I guess for me, what's important about this is that we've identified some dollars that we want to put towards stormwater remediation, because that river, which is behind Merchants Way, is a Category 5 river, which is the highest category of pollution that's categorized by the Buzzards Bay as estuary.
And the makeup of the hazmat site, what are the chemicals that are being found in the water?
Well, primarily it's runoff from the roofs and from the cars that travel on Merchants Way. So in other words, during the first 15 minutes of a storm, all of the runoff which exists both on the roofs of the homes, because you have things like bird droppings and things of that nature up there, and on the bottom you have gasoline and from cars and oil. In the first 15 minutes, that gets lifted right off the ground and travels with the water. So you have to capture that first 15 minutes of stormwater. That's and if you can capture the first 15 minutes of stormwater at an inch, then you capture 90% of the pollutants that would go into the river.
So these are the good old-fashioned, like they are in New Bedford. It rains, sewage. It isn't sewage here, but there is no capacity. They just actually go into the river?
They go into the river. Yeah, we have storm drains right now that capture some of that water and send it right into there's outfalls behind the railroad tracks. I want to say there's at least 3 outfalls behind the railroad tracks.
And people eat the things that they catch in that river?
That's correct, and they should not, because a Category 5 says...
Are there warning signs?
I'm not certain if there are. I just know that Category 5 states that you should not fish or swim in those waters. Now, interestingly enough, I will just say this, and I don't know, I'm not the harbor master, but there's a lot of blue crabs out there.
Yeah.
Blue crabs are actually one of the fish that clean that up.
Right, but there are people that fish there on a daily basis
And they should
when it's
not be
not
fishing there.
99 below
They
zero.
should not be fishing there.
And I'm sure that they are consuming it themselves, although it may be that they are serving it to others as well. But what kind of liability, help me out here, none? You know it's polluted
Bowen.
water. It's like New Bedford Harbor. There were signs all over it saying, don't swim, don't eat the fish.
Basically, the Massachusetts Department of Fisheries, Marine Fisheries, issues closures, and they're posted. I don't believe there's closures all the time in those areas.
But if it's a Category 5, shouldn't it be a closure? Shouldn't Mr. Buckminster ask for a closure?
I'm not sure it's a Category 5 at that particular spot we're talking about.
It is at that spot. Behind Merchants Way, it is. Up the river, further, it is not. It's Category 3 up the river.
Yeah.
But right there, it is Category 5.
Well,
Define up the river. By those oil tanks that are across
I'm
from
not,
the Gulf Range?
I happened to read a report months and months ago, and so I can't give you the exact area, but I know up the Wankinko River, heading to Tremont Nail, up towards that end. At some point, that river is a Category 3 river, and then as it comes down towards Merchants Way, at some point it changes to a Category 5.
Yes, but it also goes in front of and behind the old Bryant Farm, the Nesrellis property, and goes behind the sewage treatment plant, goes behind there. There's an
I would
enormous amount-
suggest if you're interested in learning more about this, I'm happy to work to ask folks from Buzzards Bay Estuary who are quite knowledgeable on this to come in and chat with you about it.
You didn't answer the question. Could you please?
Thank you, Selectman. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Just very quickly, if there is licensed shell fishing going on in this particular area, then it would probably behoove the shellfish warden, and I believe Mr. Buckminster is the shellfish warden, to post the site just saying flats closed, or put it on a website, or somehow just notify the public that they're not to fish in that particular area.
Which they do. No, they do that.
Kidding me? They're all over that
That,
place.
not only
they-
that, but
they-
they cross the railroad tracks. They actually walk on the railroad. The whole thing is messy.
Yeah,
Can you, this isn't really.
yeah, we're
part
kind of
this
getting
discussion.
far afield here.
Maybe you could just ask the town administrator for Selectman Whiteside to discuss this with the harbor master.
Thank you.
So, further on the runoff remediation, I guess we could call it.
Yeah, I think there are a number of solutions to the remediation. They include putting in things like rain gardens. They include installing pervious pavement in the area, and there are other ways in which they might work underneath the ground with some drainage systems. So we have in the plan there are several different solutions. So we can look at those solutions and identify ones that we think make sense and bring that back to the board and have a conversation about it. But I think the key here is that we're allocating $100,000 to try to address some of this issue, which I think is an important issue to address.
And then the planning one, what's that one? Number 6.
Essentially, that's for any projects that may come up that you need to develop a plan for before bringing forth for the next grant next year.
Okay, so it's sort of a spin-off of admin?
Yeah, well, in a way, but it would be hiring someone to
Right.
plan and do designing,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
My turn?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not happy with this presentation. Okay. We shouldn't have to ask all these questions about what's here and what you're doing and what it is. I mean, that should be in the presentation, in my estimation. And but it should have. I mean, there should be some backup for this. Do we have some backup for this? You do? It's in a previous packet. Did I miss that meeting?
That was the 17th.
Okay, so you did bring in all that stuff. Okay, so then that's my fault, not yours.
I'm happy, sir. I'm happy to sit down with you at any time to review that
Okay,
stuff.
that's good,
and
and
answer.
I'll have to do that because this, having these just numbers sort of thrown on a piece of paper doesn't tell me a lot. You know what I'm saying? And so I need to have a little more information, knowing that administration is 28% of the total budget.
Mhm.
And there's really no backup here for it. That's why I'm trying to get to the point. So
That's
maybe
been
you and I
pretty
should
standard,
have a
yeah.
meeting, and I can go through that before
Sure.
we get too far into this.
Be happy to do that.
That building, the building on Recovery Road,
Mm-hmm.
I have some interest in this a little bit. It's a slab building,
Mm-hmm.
and so the sills sit on the slab,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying the water is rotting the slabs, rotting
the
the
bottom, yeah.
sills,
That's the
basically. And
bottom.
also, as we all know, it'll travel up the studs, and it depletes the bottom portion of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Is that included in this repair?
Yes.
So you're going to rip off the siding, open up the bottom, replace the sills
Mm-hmm.
and the studding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that needs to be as needed, so to
Right.
speak.
We had an estimate from one of the engineers with that specific strategy.
Okay, and that's the one you're going to use?
Yes, it happened to
Okay.
be the lowest estimate.
And so, how did he go about determining the extent of the damage? I mean, could there be more damage we're talking about?
Yes, there possibly could be more
So-
because they didn't rip. At the time, we did a
Exactly.
walkthrough of the
Right.
property, and all of the engineers agreed that to determine the real extent of the damage, you're going to have to actually start the work process.
Well, you're going to get the siding off.
Yeah,
And once you
good,
get the
right.
siding off, then you're going to see what really exists
Mhm.
under there, and that's going to be the issue.
Mhm.
So this actually could escalate
It-
or need more money.
It could, and
So
we
you
may
could-
be able to phase it.
So you might have to do like the front side and then the side or whatever and things of that nature. So this could sort of the scope could change.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned you spent a bunch of money in the rehab of this building in recent times.
Mhm.
And you have no numbers for that of how
I want
much
to tell you, it was 100,000 plus. I can tell you that. I don't recall the exact amount. Again, I could get that for you.
So let's say that we're putting $200,000 into this building
Mhm.
at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is this building? I don't want to. I don't want to diminish it, but at what point do we have diminished return?
Well, I think here's what I can say to you. The roof is now brand new, and I think that the heating system is now brand new. So we estimate that the heating system is good for the next 15 to 20 years, and as well as the roof. So if we make these final repairs, we think that building is in good stead for that period of time.
Okay.
So from our perspective, we generate about $28,000 a year of revenue from that building.
Okay.
So if we were able to keep it for the next 20 years, that's upwards of $400,000 worth of revenue.
Okay, I guess that makes sense then. All right, I'm just trying to get to the point. I mean,
Sure.
it sounds like you've had some problems with this,
Mm-hmm.
and you still have grading issues, and we all know that this is just the tip of the iceberg once they open this up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all going to know this for sure.
Absolutely, yes.
There's going to be, I'm thinking, many more thousands of dollars that
Yeah.
are going to need to repair this
And
building.
just in response to that, I'd like to say I've only been here for 20 months. I've been trying to take a proactive approach to it, as Chairman Connaughton said. That the building hadn't been addressed in a long
Right.
time, so we're at a place where we need to think seriously about the investments. The initial investments we made in it when I got here were part of a contract that had to do with the lease. So at the time, the lessee was not paying the rent because those leasehold improvements weren't made. So we had to go and make those improvements to make sure we could get the rent paid.
That was
So
in the lease?
they were originally negotiated in the lease. Yeah,
So they withheld the rent, but once you did the repairs, they
they
had
started
to
paying
pay
the rent. Absolutely.
But they should have paid the back rent.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They did.
All right.
Yeah, so
So-
we're all set with the rent issue.
Okay.
But my point is, having initially neglected the building,
Right.
my feeling when I came in was that it's an asset. It's generating revenue, and we need to protect it so we can continue to get the revenue.
Okay, now, the last thing I want to talk about is Merchant's Way,
Mhm.
stormwater issue. Now, we know that there's new regulations as far as stormwater remediation is concerned.
Mhm.
There's the way the drainage is handled, the way the grease traps are installed, and all that kind of stuff. And $100,000 for remediation to Merchant's Way being where it is seems relatively small to me
Mhm.
for that particular road.
Mhm.
Just knowing where it sits,
Sure.
knowing what the problems are as far as water intrusion and those things, seems like that's not enough money.
I would agree, and we recently submitted a grant, a 319 grant, with the Department of Environmental Protection. We did not get that grant, but they were even though we didn't get it, they were favorable with it. They cited a couple of key things that we needed to address and told us to reapply. So we feel that if we can address those things, we can reapply and we can bring some more dollars back.
Excuse me. I don't know, how many outfalls are there into the river?
I believe there are 3 outfalls on the
Maybe.
Merchants Way side, and
Yeah,
I want to say at least 1 on the Bessie Park side.
that's obviously, we all know that that's how they did it years ago.
Mhm.
Just everything just dumped in like that.
Mhm.
And obviously, that's not a good thing. It's
Right.
never been a good way.
Right.
But hopefully, and you're right about, it's absolutely true. It's that first initial blast that you have to catch.
Yeah, the first flush, they call it.
Yeah, the first flush, exactly. And this is a good thing, believe me, for that area. And I hate to shut that area down because there's a lot of people that use that area.
Mm-hmm.
And they enjoy it. And, we've had a lot of to-do now with the people not wanting to cross the tracks and, this and that and all these kinds of things. And it seems like more and more areas that people have enjoyed over the years that I've been alive are being squeezed out of these areas as more and more time goes on. And I think projects like this can maybe help save those areas for some of those folks,
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good thing. It's just that, like I say, And this is actually implementation money. It says
That's correct.
design, but
Yeah,
it's not.
I apologize. I was putting that together, and I always I reference it always as the stormwater design plan. But yeah, it's actually the implementation. So the good news is we've got the plan in place. We can go back and revisit that plan. I will work with Green Seal, who generated the plan, and we'll come up with something that I think will make everyone happy. Some piece of that plan that we can implement.
Okay, thank you.
Selectman Holmes.
On the plan, what was the total cost of the plan you had if you implemented the whole thing?
The original plan started at where the Cumberland Farms area is, and went down to, I want to say, where the jug shop is. So it covered that entire area. The cost for that to implement that portion of the plan would be about $600,000. We applied for a $400,000 grant with a $200,000 match.
Right. And I only have one other question on the housing rehab. That's the program that people come and apply. I think I heard you say that right, Gene. That's not, none of this money, I want to be clear, none of this money is to be used on state housing properties. Is that correct?
It's not designated for that. It can be.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I'm saying
That is for the loan program when someone comes in and they,
It is, but
Right.
if they came in with an emergency, you could use it for that.
and
But that's not the
yeah,
intent.
a new piece of information, which I spoke with the Department of Housing and Community Development today because I wanted to ask that very same question. And essentially what they said is that while it's eligible to be used in a state housing program, that they would have concerns about that us meeting our initial goals.
I would have serious concerns
related
about
to
that as
the-
well
to the-
because
to the
we
housing
get this
impact.
money for other reasons, not to fix state property.
Yeah.
The state needs to come up with the money to fix those properties. All right.
Yeah,
That's
they
all.
Get, they
That's
get enough
all I
of our money.
We don't want to be giving it back to them.
No, it's just but I want to
heard
just be
some,
clear.
you know, around town you hear, oh, we're going to
Yeah.
get money from CEDA and this and that, and I said, well, wait a minute, you know, I don't. That's not what the intention of CEDA is.
No,
for.
and just to be clear, because one of the things in my world, whenever you look at block grants, you have to look at two things for every project. Is it eligible, and does it meet a national objective? So I asked the question of the state, is it eligible to work? So, for example, if a person in the housing authority had an emergency, is it eligible for us to fix it? The answer was yes.
We did that
Yeah.
a couple of years
3 years
back,
ago.
right?
Yes.
When we had
Peter
forget what the
Sanborn
number
was
was for electrical outlets.
We started at 100,000. I
Right.
think we put 150 in ultimately.
Then we saw the lady's window there with the where you could she had to put a towel there to keep the snow from coming in, and then we switched the paperwork around and went from electrical outlets. I think we did some window work or something. Remember that? But it shouldn't be used routinely for that, and you know we should have probably tried to get that money back from them because that's their property.
Yeah, and I think that, like as I said, DHCD.
Not nothing against the elderly who live there,
Sure.
but you know that's a state rep, state senate, governor issue, not town of Wareham issue.
It's a governance issue. Why they weren't questioning why they weren't receiving requests for renovations, I have no idea.
Right,
Shame on them.
right, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Selectman Slavin.
I made most of my comments yesterday when you had the meeting. Just very quickly for the public, I had certain concerns about Recovery Road. I wanted to make sure, and I made it pretty clear, that if we're going to invest money in a building, we know what our long-term plan for that building is. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to sell it? Is the revenue coming in going to at least cover the cost of maintaining the building, et cetera? What is the actual tenant, the leasee, going to do? And I made a quick reference, which is not apples to apples, but everybody here unfortunately remembers the Tremont Nail project, where we bought a piece of property, and the people who own the property who we bought it from moved out 2 years later, and we had no plan in place. And we're still suffering from that particular issue. The Route 195 Information Center is basically a trailer for all intents and purposes. My only concern there is there a possibility of looking at the state to see if they have any more trailers, because they keep cutting back on these particular information centers all around the state. And it might be, instead of putting money into this one, there might be something better available for the same or less money. So I would look into that at least. I don't have a problem fixing it. I think it's quite valuable to the town. And the stormwater management, as Mr. Tropiano mentioned, we're under the gun for 2014 for stormwater management implementation. It's a federal requirement. The state's going to be very active on it. Obviously, Merchants Way, the runoff all through that, across the railroad tracks, etc., is an issue. We have issues with not only the groundwater, but the soil just below the surface. We've already run into the issue with the Merchants Way area where we drilled in and we found deposits of gasoline, etc., which tend to move as the tide moves. So you never know when you're going to find it in the ground there. So that's an issue there that I wanted to make sure that we work very closely with municipal maintenance to make sure we have a unified game plan, because that's an issue the town's going to have to face, and it's going to be forced to make these repairs and remediation no matter what. We
That
have
was
no
in the
choice.
motion as well.
I know it was. I asked to be put in. And that's it for me.
Well, all I'll say is, you know, I heard the presentation last night, I heard the debate, I heard the decision-making. I think, personally, I'm fairly comfortable with these numbers. I'm pleased to see that there's been a shift upward in the public service and in the housing rehab numbers. I think we have to remember that the reason we get this money in the first place is because we are a, quote, mini entitlement community, which means we're not a city, but we basically have city-like problems here. And the state, in its wisdom, has decided to designate us along with 8 other communities currently, I believe. I think 10 were initially in the program, and somebody managed to improve their economic climate enough to climb out of that, which is a good thing. If Wareham ever gets to the point where we're not getting this money, that's probably a good thing. So I want people to understand that. But where it is to help certain targeted areas, where it is to help people who are having housing emergencies, I think it's important for those to be for that number to rise to where it is. As far as the public services go, you know, I understand that you've managed to recruit Selectman Whiteside to help you go through some of this stuff.
Yeah,
Good work there. She's very thorough. And to help vet the applications and to grade them accordingly. One thing people need to understand about this is I think over the course of this current year, I've been asked by CEDA to come to the Board of Selectmen and get approval, I think 3 different times, to sign amendments to the grant. Just because this is the application that goes in, this is just because it's what the selectmen are willing to sign off on, doesn't mean there aren't changes to it over the course of the year. It's just as a practical matter, you may find that Recovery Road, maybe that needs another $5,000 to get done. You might find that the public service component, the programs that are selected, don't need all that money. Maybe it goes a little bit goes somewhere else. So this is a little bit amorphous. This is what you see today. What you see today may not be what you see in you know, next September, October. So with that in mind, are there any other questions? Anything further you'd like to say, Sal, or Gene?
I would just like to say that I appreciate all of the support that you have given to me, certainly, throughout the year. And as I mentioned the last time I was here, I think it's really important that we change the planning cycle. Now that I've been here for 20 months, I've come to realize that the planning cycle is a little bit off. I think what we need to do is as soon as we put this grant in February 14th, we need to start the planning cycle immediately for the next grant, so that we have plenty of time to vet the projects out. It's very important to me that we're all rowing a boat in the same direction. And I want you to know that as a director of the organization, I support the agenda that you as a Board of Selectmen have, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to help you be successful.
Just
Yes.
a further comment, I pick up on what Salvador had to say. I really would like, once we start the planning cycle, to see if we could come in for another hour's workshop. I would prefer that we discuss it with you early on so we don't pedal forward and find out we have to go backwards. And I'd rather all be on the same page. And I think we can come out with a better plan and moving forward and do good work.
Yes, well, thank you. You know, Sal had actually mentioned this to me, I want to say as much as a month ago, when we first, you know, discussed how to get this done well, for you to get this done, really, by February 14th, which is your cutoff date. And it's clear that you don't want to start talking about this in early December. You want to start talking about this in, you know, May or June or sometime around there. Do your public hearings for your ideas. Get the public input. When you do it a little bit compressed like this, unfortunately, it's hard to get all the stakeholders involved, and frankly, all the people who might request certain projects to be done involved. So going forward, I think it's a good idea, as you say, Sal, to begin the process earlier. It'll be less hurried, less rushed. That having been said, I thank the CEDA board and you for coming to this meeting with numbers that, you know, we could certainly support. Numbers that you've carefully thought about, notwithstanding the compressed time frame. And I think on the agenda next week, what I'll do is put a notice of a vote to authorize the signing of the application. So, anything else on the board? I guess we'll need a motion to adjourn the special meeting, and then we'll recommence at 7 o'clock with our regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Selectman Slavin, seconded by Selectman Whiteside. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. We are adjourned.
And a motion to adjourn for the CEDA board? Aye.